Good morning and good afternoon, everyone who is joining this event. This conversation, which we have titled Findings and Lessons That Have Been Learned by Means of the Participation of the CTAQ Project Participation, which has a purpose of generating air quality forecasts for the qualifying cities. Now, we do have a session scheduled today for 1 hour and a half. This event is being broadcasted live on Facebook, and this is also being recorded so that we can access it later on. So, those who would like to listen to this event in English, you can. You can select the world icon at the bottom of your screen, and there you will be able to select the language accordingly. And you can listen to this conference in the language of your choice. Once again, welcome everyone. My name is Beatriz Cardenas. I am Director of Air Quality in WRI Mexico, and I will be here with Jessica Sedan coordinating this session today. As I was saying, we are very fortunate in having the attendance of incredible experts and representing as well the local authorities of the cities that have been participating in this project. I will provide a brief introduction of the speakers. Then we will have a short presentation by Jessica Saran and Christopher Keller about this project. And then we will have a presentation in which our guest speakers will talk about what has been their point of view about this experience and having participated in this project. We also would like to understand, in terms of the lessons, what are, from the point of view of our speakers and guests, what are the main challenges and the main next steps. So, of course, the first step should be to have a better air quality in the cities where we live. So, how can we have access to this air quality? And how are air quality forecasts a tool in managing this air quality project? At the end, we will hear final messages from our speakers and conclusions. If you have any questions during this session, please write them down on the chat or the Q&A icon. In case we are not able to answer all of the questions, we will compile all of the questions and send them back answered to whoever asked that question. Let me introduce our participants for today. We have, on behalf of the City of León, the General Director of the Environment, Ms. María del Carmen Mejía. We also have the Environmental Ministry of Bogota, Carolina Urrutia. We also have the Sustainable Development Minister from Nuevo León, Mexico, Mr. José Vital. We also have the Environmental Ministry from Quito, Mr. Juan Carlos Avilés. On behalf of the Secretary of the Environment of Guanajuato, we have Ms. Sandra Herrera, who is Undersecretary of Environmental Management. Thank you very much for joining. Now, we also have Mr. Sergio Graf. He is the Environmental Minister of the state of Jalisco in Mexico. We also have Dr. Christoph Keller, who is a researcher from the GMAO NASA office. He is the lead investigator of the CDAQ project. We have Dr. Jessica Seddon as well. She is the Air Quality Global Leader from WRI, and myself, that I will be moderating today's session. Without further ado, let's move on with the next part of the agenda, which is a presentation by Jessica Seddon and Christoph Keller. Thank you very much, Beatriz, and I apologize in advance that I will not be speaking in Spanish today, because more or less 10 years ago that I stopped speaking it.
since I've used Spanish regularly, and speaking about air quality in Spanish and why forecasts is slightly beyond my technical vocabulary. But gracias a todos por su participación y en el proyecto y también en este webinar. I'm just going to say a few words about what the project is and why, for those of you who have not participated in it yet and are just coming to learn what the City AQ project is. So the first point we've already noted that it's basically a project to bring together local observations and the global forecasting model developed by the Global Modeling and Assimilation Office at NASA to be able to optimize those forecasts to bias correct them in order to have them be useful for city and state users, particularly subnational users. Now, with the next slide, I just want to say a few words about why forecasts. So why should we focus so much on forecasts? And there are really 3 points, 3 benefits. The first is self-protection. And I think we've all seen that adaptation is incredibly important. And the ability to just take to take costly actions that may not be possible every day to protect oneself, to protect children, is something that forecasts enable. The second, if you go to the next one, Mercedes, if you click the slide one more time, the second aspect of why forecasts are important is to enable cities and subnational leaders to take costly regulatory actions. So, for example, the kinds of controls that might be relevant and acceptable on an exceedance day, on a day with high background pollution, may not be the kinds of things that one wants to implement every day, but the forecasts allow a more dynamic response. So if we could go to the next slide, the third benefit of forecasts is really the ability to build awareness of air pollution. A fact constantly repeated over and over again with slight variations, behaviorally, drawing on behavioral science, is much more compelling than simply reading something once. So forecasts as a mechanism for being able to build awareness and accountability, which in turn also creates momentum and the possibility for clean air action. These are the triple benefits that we see from forecasts. So one of the goals, if we go to the next slide, one of the goals of this project was to be able to develop a scalable system. We can just click all the way through to see the slide. Was to be able to develop a scalable system that would combine local information with a globally available open model, and to be able to develop forecasts that would be useful for subnational air quality managers. So far, what we've done, if we go all the way through, is that we've shown the proof of concept, and Christoph will speak a bit more about the methodology behind it. We've also learned, I think, and I look forward to the next hour or so, to be able to learn more about how people are using these forecasts, what might be next, and what might be useful. Just want to have one more slide, which is just giving a sense of who's involved in the City AQ project. So if we could just go you can see that we have quite a project team that's been pulled together from NASA, from 4 WRI offices, from a group called OpenAQ, a platform for open air quality data, and Development Seed was our technology partner. I'm very grateful to all the participants from Latin America, and just want to note that we had other feedback from cities in Southeast Asia, in India, and several cities in Africa. And we're looking forward over the coming years to be able to extend the forecasts and the accessibility of these kinds of forecasts to cities and policymakers and subnational leaders in other places over the next few years. So with that, I'll turn it over to Christoph to speak a bit about the methodology, and then we can move quickly to the lessons and what's come out of the project. So, gracias.
Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Jessica.
En efecto, vamos a pasar ahora a la presentación de Christoph Keller, del doctor Christoph Keller. Por favor, Christoph.
Sí, gracias. Yo también voy a hablar en inglés. Es un poquito más fácil para mí. Pero ya lo entiendo español y se puede preguntar en español. No es algún problema. Entonces, so I will switch to English now because it is nowadays a bit easier for me. So I have really just one slide that kind of summarizes what we are doing here at the NASA Global Modeling and Assimilation Office, where I am. We are just outside of Washington, D.C. And really our main role is that we support all of the NASA observations that look at the Earth. And we build essentially the Earth's model that simulates kind of like what is happening in the atmosphere right now in real time. And my part in this effort is that I'm the lead in the atmospheric composition aspect of this Earth model, which is the Global Earth Observing System, or the GEOS model. So it's a big model that includes all components of the Earth, and one part is the atmosphere, including reactive gases and their pollutants. And I'm the lead developer of the reactive gases part. So really, most of the day, we are working on making sure that the model, as we simulate sort of like what's happening in the atmosphere right now, is really up to date, that it's the latest science in it, and that it incorporates all of the available observations that we have. This could be NASA satellite observations, but it can also be a lot of other observations. And in particular for air quality, what we have been working with quite a bit more recently is that we want to have these ground-based observations that really essentially observe the air quality at the nose level, which is where most of the people care about air pollution. And we want to integrate that with our model. And the way that we do that is we use machine learning techniques so that we really combine the model predictions and the observations in an optimal fashion. And in particular, what we're interested in is that we want to figure out, are there some biases in the model that we may have simply because the model has a fairly coarse resolution. We run it at 25 by 25 square kilometer, which is the highest resolution global model that's available right now. But it's obviously not what the observation site may measure, and it also has some other biases. So with using surface observations and combining them with the model, we can really blend the two in an optimal fashion, and we can essentially learn where the model may have always some systematic biases. And then we can bias correct the model at that location and provide a much better tailored forecast at this particular location. And that's what we do in the City AQ project, where we combine the model with observations at the partner cities and then produce essentially a tailored forecast at those locations. And what we can do with that then is that we can, using those tailored forecasts, we can make essentially a prediction in the future in what the air quality will be at the given observation site. And we have done this now successfully in many places. And one of the areas where it's always very interesting is over India, because in the November, they have a lot of agricultural fires where they burn essentially their fields so that they can replant it, and the air pollution during those times is just absolutely, it's really crazy. And the model does actually a good job, and maybe Mercedes, you can replay that animation in the middle again. I don't know if that's possible, but what you could see there, or also what you can just see in the still image, is that sort of like, yeah, there we go. So every day we produce a 5-day forecast. That's the red to the yellow, is where every day we do a new forecast, and that essentially gives you an indication, what does the model think how the air pollution will look like? And then the black line in this case is what was actually observed. And you can see that overall, the model correctly predicted that there was a strong increase in the air pollution over Delhi, sort of like from November 5th to November 6th. That was simply because the air was moving from the fields where there was really the burning towards Delhi, and the model predicted that correctly. So essentially by using those forecasts, the authorities in Delhi would have been able to to get a bit more prepared for the plume is coming and it will hit us. So those are the type of things that we hope to be able to help with by sort of like having a prediction a few days out, and this is what the air quality is that you can expect. Similarly, another example that I want to show, this is the Alberta wildfires that happened in 2019. Again, our model, because we can see the wildfires with the satellite. So whenever there's a satellite seeing a wildfire, it goes directly into our model. And then from that, we can essentially make a prediction where the fire plume's going. And what you can see here at the top, this is the model prediction of the fire plumes. And the little triangles is the fire locations that were identified by the satellite. And then on the bottom, this is a satellite image and what it actually looked like. And again, you can see that the model did actually a pretty good job in making those predictions in where the plumes would go. And this is also an event that was a lot in the media because there was a lot of fire. So these are the type of things that, our model, it does that type of information. It produces in real time on a daily basis everywhere in the world. And we are very interested really to work with end users like you and using your observations, combining them with the model to make the information that we produce even more useful and more local. So I'm very excited about this project. It's something that I love doing because it's applied. It goes straight to end users who need the information. And so I'm very excited to work with you on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christoph. Both Jessica and Christoph mentioned not only the origins of this project and the development of the same, but also with these cases that Christoph was referring to, how these forecast models can be used. And I share what Christoph is saying. We have been very much looking forward to this, and we are very, very thankful to all of the technical teams that have been involved around this process. It is critical for us to receive this type of information, but also it is really important for us to learn from each other, from those who are feeding the information into the model and those who are doing the local observation. So also an acknowledgement to the technical teams of the environmental offices that are here represented by their ministers. So thank you so much for joining today. And it is really exciting to have this type of forecasts for the participating cities. These air quality forecasts are being generated by each of the monitoring stations based on what Christoph mentioned. This can be said by those who have been coordinating this project, right? But this project had a purpose. The purpose was to generate an air quality forecast model that could be used by the local authorities. So now we will listen from those who are day-to-day working in environmental and air quality management so that we can listen to their experiences in the participation of this project. So we will start now with the Environmental Ministry of Quito, Mr. Juan Carlos Avilés. And then we will move on in order to Maria del Carmen Mejia to talk about the experience of León, Guanajuato, and then Carolina Urrutia from Bogotá. And we will continue in order then Nuevo León, Guanajuato, and Jalisco. Thank you very much for joining, and Mr. Juan Carlos Avilés, the floor is yours. Can you all hear me okay? Yes, we can hear you very well. Great, thank you so much. This is a real privilege to share this space with you. First of all, Beatriz, thank you so much for moderating this session so that we can also talk about the experiences that we have from various cities, in this case, Quito. So I believe that we have several characteristics in common with Bogota or with Mexico City. We have a geography that is very irregular, but very rich in terms of air exchange because we have the mountain range of the Andes in South America. So it is really a privilege to share with different speakers from Jalisco, from Guanajuato, from Bogota. I really feel very grateful. Now, let me talk about that about our network of air quality assessment. We have 24 stations that produce high quality information. We have been using this since 2003, actually, so almost 20 years of reliable, high quality information. We even have international certifications in this system so that we can ensure its trustworthiness and reliability. Now, we do have a good database that can be contrasted of 90% of the times. So this model was actually built alongside with NASA as well. So we can see that NASA, with the satellites that they have and that they operate around the planet, sometimes in terms of geography, it gets complicated. But we can support those efforts with the correlation that they do with their satellites and with the stations that we have on site. We can generate much more reliable information for the city. All of this information that we provide is linked with the satellite data, and this, as I said, becomes into much more reliable information. This is quite relevant information that is being generated specifically around the pandemic. This has been extremely useful for mobility purposes, for emission assessment purposes, for demonstration purposes as well in the territory, because this data need to be reliable. So just as a quick example, we have restricted one of the lanes in the Amazonas Avenue, which is one of the most important avenues in the country. So there are two for emission generating vehicles and one for cyclists. And this type of information is actually very valuable for the city, and this demonstrates the fact that we need to move towards the decarbonization of the city. So this is what I can share about what we have been doing in the city of Quito. I am not sure if we are going to talk about challenges to the future, or are these going to be addressed later on today? Yes, actually, we do have a specific space in the agenda to talk about challenges. Okay, thank you. That's great then. Thank you very much. I have just been told that Mari del Carmen Mejia has designated Teresa to speak on her behalf. But in the meantime, let's just pass the floor to Carolina Urrutia from Bogota. Thank you so much, Beatriz. It has been really a pleasure to work with this project in the last months. And it is, of course, an amazing pleasure to share all of these lessons learned with colleagues from other cities. Now, let's just be brief. I mean, maybe I'm not that brief, but I will talk about how this modeling has been used in Bogota. We started using this modeling in 2013. Initially, this came out of an agreement with the La Salle and Florida universities. And as of 2017, we have been using this type of models to create environmental forecasts. And we use this for several things. On the one side, we use forecasts to inform the population about the situation. We also generate scenarios that allow us to understand what is the public policy measures that need to be taken so that we can actually provide good policies. Number three, we also provide qualitative and quantitative information to measure the impact of other types of measurements that are done, because we do regional modeling. We also predict the impact of air quality. So when we declare, for example, an alert and some restrictions are implemented, we use the model in order to see when this limitation will actually achieve its purpose. And perhaps in general terms, what we are trying to do is to understand the dynamics of our atmosphere, not only in our city, but in the whole region. And of course, we share all of this data with our own technicians, many of whom have very important technical degrees, and with other agencies as well. So when WRI very kindly offered to participate in this project with NASA, we thought that this would be amazing. So we thought on the one side that it would be very difficult to predict regional environmental crises. So we actually had a very long environmental alert earlier this year, because this was concerning, because this happened when the pandemic was coming around and all of these restrictions around mobility happened. Even when there were no cars in the street, we had the same air quality, which was bad. So we realized that we were not being able to predict, to forecast exactly what the air quality conditions were and what were the actual factors that were impacting on it. So we wanted to improve the capacity of improving regional air quality forecasts. And the real response in this case, sometimes it's not the contingencies, but actually the redirection or diversion of traffic in the city. Number two, we had been strengthening our modeling and forecast capacities for several years, but we knew that there was much more to do. So that's why we were excited to participate here. And we already knew some information in real time, but we wanted to strengthen those capacities. So those were the main lines of work. On the one side, to share tools so that we can immediately, real time, share this information with others for this CDAQ project. Number two, to adjust the estimated concentrations. I don't know, how do you read this? GOCF, or I mean, that's the specific name of the project. But the idea is to share and to work this with artificial intelligence and to download this forecast. So we started working in April 2020, basically when the uncertainties around COVID-19 started. And as of that time, we have been able to share our experiences of air quality forecasting in Bogota. And as Beatriz was saying in the very beginning, we have been able to acknowledge our great air quality technicians. They are really a treasure, led by Mr. Sanchez and several other private agencies that have been working in air quality. And it has been an amazing privilege to work with all of you. So it is great that they are here also to share their experiences. We have the CMAP, which is an environmental modeling system, and we have been working with them and with the AIR network to build an algorithm that calculates hour per hour these calculations and shares with CDAQ networks. So we had the GOCF training and the portal, which was excellent. WRI and NASA presented the adjustment of each of these models in the stations, and then we were able to present our forecasts for the network. And we have also been using the success of this project. So we created an API for daily downloads. And in this way, we have been able to work together. And with this specific model developed for the city of León, which has been extremely useful for us as well. So this has been our experience about this. I can say that technically it has been extremely useful. It has also been very good for our technicians, for an IT guys to have this type of opportunity to know what's going on in other cities so that we can improve what we're doing locally based on what's happening internationally. So we believe that this is just the beginning of a much longer relationship so that we can continue working around this issue. Thank you very much, Secretary Urrutia. This has been a real privilege to work with you as well. We will move on now with the participation of Mr. Jose Vital from the Sustainable Development Agency in Nuevo León. Thank you very much, and good morning and good evening. First of all, I would like to thank the possibility of sharing this panel with all of you, and also to thank as well WRI and NASA to participate in this important and technically capable project. So first off, let me tell you that the experience that we have had in Nuevo León, such as Quito, Guanajuato, and León, which are sister cities to us. Now, the metropolitan area of Monterrey is the second biggest in importance in Mexico. We have accelerated growth, and with this type of accelerated growth, pollution problems arise and grow as well. So this is a very, very important issue for us. We do have environmental monitoring stations all the way from 1994. We received just 5 years ago, almost 6 years now, 10 monitoring environmental stations. And plenty of information that has been documented since. However, that information was just there, stored in some database, and with our technicians, Jair and Armando and others that have been working hard with this data, we were able to make this information not only to be there, stored, but also to be used for forecasting. So we started with air quality forecast models and with interpretations with our air quality office. And the project that we had in mind, we had already providing some daily forecasts around air quality. However, with this project that we are working with WRI and NASA, the expectation that we have is much better. Now we have a 6-day air quality forecasts coming from this project. Let's move on to the next slide, please. So these are 4 stations, 4 environmental monitoring stations that we currently have. And actually, my administration will end with 15 of these. We had 10. And these are 4 of them that this is information coming from the model, and this is being updated every day. And we monitor pollutants such as the PM 2.5, O3, and NO2 in at least 4 stations. Of course, we do have this technical feedback from the staff of WRI that allows for a greater autonomy to communicate this information. And thanks to this project, we have been able to strengthen our monitoring network because it provides a lot of information that allow us to tell the people inside the government that we need to strengthen our environmental monitoring systems, as we have been doing, coming from 10 to 15 stations with an additional budget that has been allocated for their purpose. And we also have an air quality center that has been installed in the Nuevo León University, which is actually ready. It's going to be opened next week. So this is part of the achievement so far. Likewise, the experience of our technicians of generating and sharing information and seeing that what we are doing in our environmental monitoring system actually has a greater purpose rather than other than just storing data. So this has been an amazing achievement. And in my next participation today, I will talk about the challenges as well that we see locally, nationally, and regionally in terms of generating public policies and norms that actually allow us to act in a much more timely fashion. Thank you so much for this invitation, and thank you for including Nuevo León in this project. The governor of the state is very, very happy to have been invited to participate here. So thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next participation that we will have. Thank you so much, Secretary Vital from Nuevo León. Now we will move on to Guanajuato with Ms. Sandra Herrera. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. on behalf of Marisa Ortiz, our secretary, she would have been very pleased to be here, but she had to go to an event with the governor. So thank you very, very much for the opportunity to participate in this project with WRI and NASA. I believe that it is extremely important now to emphasize as well what some of the previous speakers have said, which is that last year was a year that made us reflect around many issues related to not only the way that we measure emissions, but also in the way of understanding atmospheric chemistry and also to identify much better emission sources. We were all very surprised that even though there was a drastic reduction of economic activity, this didn't really reflect in a reduction of environmental emissions. So there was a big question there from the citizenship, from the population, to see whether what we were actually informing was true, was accurate, was reliable, or what was going on. Because people saw that there was no activity on the streets, but there were the exact same non-satisfactory air quality reports. So this was a red flag to us, right? So here in Guanajuato, we do have 18 monitoring stations distributed in 10 municipalities, and particularly in the industrial corridor where the city of León is located, which is the biggest city in the state. And we had to analyze how could we provide a response to people around this mismatch, right, of reporting a non-satisfactory air quality and not seeing any kind of economic activity to any normalcy, right? So this was a really good opportunity to work around forecasting. And we were able to take all of the data that were being gathered by our stations and using this model that has been explained already in terms of forecasting behavior of the air quality. So we do have a quite well coordinated system with the municipalities, particularly the industrial corridor, in order to communicate people when we find, for example, agricultural fires or when we see non-favorable air quality conditions, which mean that we will have to reduce certain activities or to increase vigilance around fires, etc. So the idea is that this type of forecasting systems will definitely make things easier for us, because the question here is how are we going to strengthen our contingency and pre-contingency programs, and how can we implement a more timely action plan and at the same time understand that technically everything related to air quality management is very demanding. So we need to move beyond the lessons that we learned 10, 15 years ago. We need to find new ways of understanding what's happening so that we can also work around or work to propose new air quality policies. We are currently facing a moment in which we are receiving information from low-cost sensors at the street level. We had information coming from our monitoring systems, and there is a lot of information as well coming from several applications that measure air quality. And now we do have this ability to provide a forecast via satellite. So we really need to take advantage of these tools in order to better understand how emissions behave and how to better plan these monitoring systems, not only in terms of gathering data, but also in a way that allow us to modify the city in such a way that we can decentralize activities or establish certain schedules around activities. Rather, just implementing the correct policy that provides better air quality for the well-being of our communities. So this project has definitely been extremely important for us. And also, we saw an area of opportunity here, which is to continue protecting the quality of our data. For example, we saw in the technical dialogue that we usually use, we sometimes don't understand the importance of following up on the data to know that we are getting reliable data. So it's not only about publishing reliable data, but also to create exercises and activities around this reliable data, like the forecasting. It is important to understand how to sustain the quality of data by means of our monitoring stations. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sandra. This is another issue that many of the participants expressed, this quality of data issue and how to maintain data. This is a big task that requires a lot of resources as well. So thank you so much, Sandra, for mentioning this. Now we will move on to the participation of Sergio Graf from Jalisco. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone who has joined this webinar. First of all, I would like to thank the amazing work and support provided by the World Resources Institute, and also to congratulate the technical team of WRI and NASA for the results that we have obtained in this work, in this project, and also the team from the environmental agency. And thank you so much to everyone working around this project. So based on the project and the workshop that we had with you in Guadalajara by NASA specialists in terms of the great scale generation forecasting models, that's where we got interested in participating in this initiative. And now that we had the opportunity to collaborate with WRI and NASA, we are really happy to be part of this project and also future projects that could come out of this, of assessment and accompanying of all of these projects. So we really appreciate the generosity that you have been providing to the state of Jalisco. Now, this project that has been developed now allowed us to understand the behavior of pollutants, not only in our city, but also to compare our model with other participating cities. And in this way, identify the most salient differences and also to establish this collaboration network in order to improve the systems that we currently have in our state and that we have been developing alongside other sister cities around the world. Now, from the state of Jalisco, we are busy creating this air quality modeling system with the support of the French government and the state government. So this type of tools have allowed us to understand the complexity of these tools. This predictive system, I read, for example, which is connected to or will be hosted actually in the Guadalajara University. And with the support of the European team, we are carrying out the transference of knowledge so that this system can be successfully operated in the state and also generating the corresponding technical capabilities. It is worth mentioning that this CDAQ tool, in our case, is being used to make comparisons between our monitoring systems in order to see what is the input and output coming from our model versus the model that we are working with area technology. So we understand that the update of this type of tools require a high technical knowledge and skill, and especially being able to guarantee quality data. Now, this CDAQ tool allows us to have a first approach to air quality forecasting systems in our city that will allow us to improve the tools that we already had. Now, in a context in which we currently live, where we have some diseases like COVID-19 going around that impact respiratory diseases particularly, it is extremely important to inform the population what are the protection and prevention measures that they can take based on the information that we can gather. So I believe that having this type of precise predictive systems will allow us to definitely provide a better service to our populations and also to design more effective public policies to generate contention models in moments where we have bad air quality, knowing that we are able to contain those factors that really impact in air quality when it gets bad. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you very much, Sergio, for sharing this. And of course, the fact that a city has more and more tools to do their job, and now the city has their own model, is another tool in your toolbox that you can definitely use to improve these experiences. And we hope that this CDAQ project will allow you to improve your own models. Now let's move on to the second part of our agenda. Oh, actually, we do have Miss Teresa Rodriguez, who will talk about the experience of León. We have heard from several cities already, so now we will listen from Teresa. Are you there, Tere? Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to apologize on behalf of the secretary. She had a busy agenda and it was quite complicated to join. She tried all the way to the last minute, but she wasn't able to do it. Anyway, let's share the experience that we had in León. When we started working with WRI, this project that we started was kickstarted with an analysis of León. And León already had a model of air quality measurement, but we found ourselves with a lot of challenges. So we realized that there were some needs from the state and from the city of León, but what could we do in order to improve, specifically around air quality? We have been quite reactive because once we have high concentrations of pollutants, that's when we act. And that is a common practice here. So part of what we are trying to work with WRI is to strengthen the capacities of our office, the environmental office, which are the ones who, we are the ones who analyze air quality. And we understood that we needed tools to actually be more proactive and specifically to have more techniques, more specialized knowledge so that we can move ahead, be more proactive and not so much reactive in these issues of becoming more preventive. We don't want to wait until we have non-advisable pollutant levels to act immediately, right? So what this model actually allows us to do, besides strengthening us and link us to other tools in cities, it actually allows us to understand what is going to be the situation several days from today. And this is really incredible for us. This is a game changer because this allows us to analyze, to plan how are we going to act and what is going to actually impact on reducing those levels. And the idea is to actually act before we actually reach a certain amount of levels. And I talk about these levels because that's when we kickstart or flip the switch when we need to act. these tools really provide a breath of air, no pun intended, in terms of having this type of tools at hand in order to avoid those concentrations of pollutants in our cities. And it is really great to communicate this to our citizens and to communicate and collaborate with other cities, with all of the other agencies. And it is great to be part of this project. We are very happy with this tool. We also saw challenges with this that we will talk about in a little bit, but definitely this has been a very useful and valuable tool for the city. Thank you very much, Tere, for sharing that. And of course, that is one of the biggest questions that we have when we designed this project, right? The fact that we knew that NASA had a tool that could be interesting for this purpose. So the proof of concept is what has allowed us to understand much further what this tool can do. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences. Let's move to block number 2. So the idea is that all of the cities represented here have access to this tool. You have already talked about the performance of the tool in your cities and how you are using it. Now, the next question is, what do you consider to be the main challenges or the next steps in terms of air quality forecasting for Latin American cities? Some things that could be perhaps brought closer to decision makers, right? So I believe that we are very happy that we actually achieved the first purpose of our project, but we definitely understand, and we have already heard from you, that there are several challenges that you guys face, right? So we would really like to hear from you in this sense. What are those challenges that you have identified, and what are the next steps in order to understand how other Latin American cities can implement this type of tools? And perhaps from your experiences, from the lessons learned, and from your suggestions, we could even move faster with this. We are going relatively slow in this search for, or the search towards clean air. So how can we move faster around this, right? That's one of my concerns. So now let's pass the floor to Mr. Aviles. I believe he's no longer on the call. I can't see him. So let's switch it around a little bit. So let's start with Sergio. Of course. Thank you very much, Beatriz. Well, probably the biggest challenge for us is definitely to have quality data in the variables that we analyze. And this is directly related to atmospheric monitoring. So one of the big challenges is to be able to have good quality data that meet the requirements of our cities, and also to have the technical people and the technical tools that are enough in order to analyze the data. This is one of the biggest challenges all the time. We understand that there are important costs associated to implementing this type of models. So the question is you were asking, how can we accelerate this? So I believe that in the measure that we can also implement financial tools or instruments that could actually fund the maintenance, installation, and operation of the systems, we will move faster, but also generating institutional policies that can bring these systems forward, not only dependent on only one agency, but in the many different stakeholders that should be part of this. So that, for example, in Jalisco, we do have the State Environmental Protection Fund, which coming from these vehicle tax that we have, we are funding some of the actions for climate protection, which has been part of the air quality forecast model, and also some specific resources coming from the national or the state budget rather. And this needs to be a cross-cutting perspective, not only sectorial a purpose. This is definitely related to the economic activity, to the industrial activity, to public transportation. So this cross-cutting approach is absolutely critical, coming from the budget as well, in order to deal with air quality problems. And this will be and continue to be important in order to develop an effective response to the problem. Now, the second challenge is to have emission inventories that are actually solid, that are robust, and we need to have adequate data in order to identify the pollutant source. This is very, very important for us in order to estimate the pollutant concentrations. For example, when we estimate the industrial pollutant concentration requires a very specific kind of data management. And for practical purposes, this means that we need to increase the activities of surveillance and assessment and follow-up in order to guarantee that this industrial sector, for example, is implementing environmental measures. For example, in Guadalajara, we see that there are some days and areas where the PM 2.5 particles are absolutely linked to the daily activities, for example, agricultural fires, as in the presentation we heard. These agricultural fires are extremely, extremely common and close to the metropolitan area of Guadalajara. So this has led us to implement certain limitations around that specific issue in the metropolitan area of Guadalajara in order to reduce this concentration of pollutants. And this definitely requires the participation of municipal governments in the enforcement of such measures. Now, we are also working in the development of a digital platform that allows us to filter and ensure the quality of data. This will allow us to escalate this system so that it can actually include the region as a whole. The measurements that were coming from the metropolitan area of Guadalajara, coming from WRI and the partnership with SEMADE, we have been able to compare the different emissions in different parts of the state. But there are, of course, important challenges in the quantification of these emissions and to have the actual, precise, reliable inventories, because this will definitely allow us to design better environmental and specific policies that will definitely allow us to change course and to address the problem. In many cases, this is absolutely related to the capacity of the industry to reinvent itself, to change to different energy sources. And with the use of financial and economic instruments, we can actually provide support to the private sector by means of investment towards green economies. And this is something that we have identified as a big challenge for us. And we have understood as well that how, with all of this information, we will be able to generate these policies for implementing these measures, but also to have tax benefits and other type of financial instruments that will allow these purposes to come to fruition. For example, mobility, public transportation, tax vehicles, etc., that are all very, very complementary. Now, the predictive model that we are generating is helping us to have more detailed information with better quality that will definitely allow us to understand in greater detail the importance of the variables of bad air quality and also the concentration of pollutants, and with that, inform the population accordingly and implement the corresponding measures to protect the population, which is, at the end of the day, the core purpose of an air quality program. And as we well know, these tools are extremely important for decision making, and therefore participating in this first model for CDAQ has been very, very important for us so that we can continue doing the integration of modeling and predictive models on our own. So thank you very much once again for the invitation to participate in this project. It has been amazing to learn so much around air quality. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sergio, once again. You really provided a comprehensive list of the challenges, so thank you so much for that. And we believe that and hope that this tool can allow us to mitigate some of those risks. Now, on behalf of Mr. Aviles, we have Valeria Diaz, Coordinator of Research. Valeria, are you there? Perhaps you could address the challenges in Quito. What are the next steps to improve those forecasts? Good morning, everyone. On behalf of Juan Carlos, he wasn't able to join right now. This subject is absolutely important to us, so that's why we really want to participate here. So thank you very much, Beatriz, and all the speakers. Now, we do have the privilege of having to participate here in this air quality program, which for us is a great advancement. We had a first attempt of a forecasting system that, for several reasons, had to be interrupted. And now, with this information that is being generated and that we are actually using through the website and through the information that we are sharing, and also with the WRI website, which is absolutely friendly to use. So this is very, very important to us. We have analyzed the information that we generated, that we have here in Quito, and in general, we have data that is very, very stable right now. Perhaps we can see that we don't have the influence of many external sectors in a big percentage, but we could see during the lockdown in 2020 how the decrease of pollutants was very drastic for us. And we could relate it very well to traffic. And this allows us to understand how can we improve the model so that we can implement better models to serve our community, and also to accompany this with other projects that have been lagging behind, even though we are actually carrying out several efforts because we do have high level technical teams, but it's quite difficult to implement that at the decision making level. So it is very important to understand how the information that is being generated from these forecasts is very helpful, and this also communicates better to the population. People like to know what is going to happen in the following days. So this is a great tool to approach the community, the population, to tell them how the city of Quito will behave, how it will look in the following 2 to 5 days. And this is an amazing way to communicate with them. Now, in terms of other types of data that we have been able to gather is the fact that we are all cities that have mountainous regions and ranges and volcanoes. It is amazing to have them, but they also cause certain problems environmentally. It doesn't always happen, but when it happens, it might be serious trouble. So we are thinking about how to generate a system of alerts in order to see, for example, when there is a volcano perhaps close to the Quito city could have perhaps some sort of eruption that might impact air quality. Now, we also have several ways of communicating this information. We have used this adjusted to a national level, and it is important to say that we need to continue improving this towards a healthcare policy, but we also need an index, which in Mexico has been developed already in a health index in terms of how air quality impacts the health of your population. In Quito, this can be quite monotonous in terms of how this information is being used. So we will continue using this data for other purposes. We have certain graphs. We have the idea to continue working with Mexico, with WRI. We have been working as well with other teams. So as you have said, we are sister cities and we are very excited to continue participating in this project. And of course, if we have an experience that is also useful for you all, we are very happy to share it with you. And also, we have learned so much from the experiences from other cities. Thank you so much. Thank you, Valeria. Thank you so much. And it is true, there is a big learning experience to be had here in the south parts of the continent. Sandra, please go ahead. Thank you very much, Beatriz. Now, in terms of the forecasts, of course, the big challenge that we have is to avoid contingencies or restrictive measures. This is something that has been addressed already by some of you. So in this issue of being just reactive, we end up quite unsatisfied. So with the forecasting model, we can avoid reaching this point, and in this way, we actually protect in a very efficient way the health of our population. So forecasts models are extremely important for this purpose, and it will also allow us to implement specific actions when conditions are not favorable. However, we not only have the challenges in this issue of forecasting, we also have been analyzing a problem that we have had in terms of what we report to the public. We report this index to the community, but when we establish a contingency or limitation measure, the data that we communicate to the public is not matching what we have in the station. So if the public starts to compare this data, at first glance, this is not the same, and this really gets confusing. So I believe that the big challenge here is how can we really improve our communication with the public at large? How can we communicate better? What are they breathing? At what point will it be convenient to actually implement certain measures to reduce emissions and help in the dispersion of pollutants? So I definitely believe that this will be still a challenge to overcome. And in terms of the satellite data that is being gathered, I believe that the purpose is not only to have a forecasting system. I believe that this is a very important tool for several reasons. On the one side, it allows us to have a regional vision and understanding. And with that, we need to know that the air pollution probably is not going to have its causes and effects in only one city, but we might actually be dragging the effects from other cities. So that is why it is important to work together towards solutions that will actually address a problem regionally. So I believe that that will be a very important aspect to implement. And on the other side, we need to identify the behavior of sources that are not state jurisdictions and that in any way are actually having an impact on the air quality of our cities. So I certainly believe that the big challenge here is to be able to identify the usefulness of these technological tools and also understanding how to make this information much more complementary, that allows us to understand several layers of it. For example, we have been talking about the information that we can get from the street level sensors and how can we improve the monitoring systems in their location, but also how can we add the satellite piece of this puzzle so that we can really understand what is happening in the atmosphere. And in this way, how can we design better public policy? And also, of course, the communication piece, which I believe it's one of the most complicated parts. Thank you very much, Secretary. Definitely, communication is a big challenge for everyone. And we have also identified that as a big challenge. Now I will pass the floor, Mr. Jose Vital from Nuevo León, to share the challenges that they have identified, not only in terms of forecasting, but also to achieve air quality. Thank you very much. This has been a very, very good presentation from the previous speakers. I actually have here a summary, and many of them match what Sergio and what Sandra just mentioned. And I believe that the main challenge that we have is definitely communication. That is why here in our presentation here, we are developing actually a new app to inform our citizens, because young people are absolutely glued to their phones currently. We're all actually, and we need a much more user-friendly app so that they can use this information in their daily lives. And in many cases, we are communicating information, as Sandra was saying, that doesn't really represent what is actually happening, because this is information without the quality and without the specific techniques that the monitoring environmental stations have. Now, the actual question here is, how can we make our population to use it so that they can take it into account as a daily tool for decision making in their lives? So I believe that this is one of the main challenges that we currently have with the application of all of these tools. As Sergio said as well, the financial piece is very important. How are we going to fund these networks in order for them to be updated every day, and also for our technicians to have the corresponding knowledge and tools to manage this information? This is a big challenge. And the third piece of it is for this information to be useful for public policy making in a context like ours, in terms of being useful for at the local level and the state level. The information coming from each of these different stations impact us all. And the next level would be the municipality. And we all should participate in this public policy making so that we can improve the quality of life of our populations. Now, let me tell you as well that we are working on a model that is a model health versus pollution. That is to say, what happens with the levels of pollution and the diseases that are linked to it. We have the first stage of this finished with the participation of the Autonomous University of Nuevo León, with the some health institutions, and the participation of the whole health sector of the state. And with all of this information, we understand that this will be very useful to understand how to manage the health piece of this plan. Training and professionalization, as I was saying before, of all of our technicians, who are people that are 100% inside these models, and they are absolutely interested in participating with teams like the NASA team and the WRI team, that will definitely yield a lot of benefits. Finally, we need to have information about this forecast so that we can also participate with other authorities, so that we can partner with education institutions, with health institutions. And in this way, we can reduce the impacts of pollution in our population, manage it better, and having this type of forecast actually allow us to reduce the pollution itself. Because if we know that there is information that we can use for pre-contingencies, as we call them, we should not reach the level of contingency. We should always be at the pre-level. And with that, we will see results and benefits for everyone. Thank you so much for your attention. On behalf of the Nuevo León government, I would like to really show my appreciation for the fact that we are part of this amazing project that is now available for our citizens. We are releasing or launching now the link with all of this information so that the inhabitants of Nuevo León can read on it. And we will definitely continue to try to make this information much more digestible for everyone. And we also want feedback from the population and from other agencies that are participating in the use of the different apps that we all use and develop. I believe that would be extremely useful. That is something that I believe we should all use. And to exchange information between this group of specialists, we need to also hear from our populations, from our citizens, in terms of how are these tools impacting their lives. I believe that's an important piece as well. So thank you very much, Beatriz, for the opportunity. And thank you so much as well to Adriana Lobo. Thank you very much, Secretary Vital. That is an amazing, amazing word, feedback. We also need to listen from our populations, from our citizens. The public needs to know and wants to know what is the air that they're breathing, and we need to hear from them as well. Now, we'll move on with Secretary Urrutia, please. Okay, I will divide this part of my intervention into, on the one side, the challenges. As many of my colleagues here, I agree. We need to improve the way that we communicate these models. As Sandra was saying, it is not easy to communicate how we do the forecast and how sometimes the data it does not match. I mean, talk about particulate matter and some of all of those things is not the easiest topic in the world in communication to have. Now, we also have an app that we're using, and in moments where there are restrictions, we also use that plenty. And we do have this effort that is linked to health recommendations, but we have noticed that people don't really feel comfortable with this information as of yet. So I believe that we need to partner with people that know more about communication than they know about air quality, so that people can also check the air quality with the weather. So sometimes I believe that we could do as they do in the US. When they talk about the weather, they talk about precipitation and air quality and all of that. That could improve the communication. On the other side, we also need to include more meteorological models in our approaches. I believe that this model does not have available updates by means of the developers. When we send this information, we were enamored from all of this type of functions, but at the end of the day, we noticed that not everything could be updated as quick as possible. So we need to improve on that, and we need to have a little bit more versatility in the analysis. Now, on the other side, we need to also have a better inventory with a greater periodicity. We do not have an updated database in the inventory yet. And this doesn't include the characterization of other analyses that we are doing. So I believe that there are a number of studies that are still pending in terms of emission and activities in regional and local areas. We have been discussing this with Beatriz and with other partners for some time, how the urban air quality is still some sort of science fiction for many. But even though this has been proven, how do you measure it, how do you communicate it, and it becomes kind of like a meteorological thing. So I think that we need to improve in the communication of how we do, and also we need to talk about the adjusting of our local levels to the national levels. So we need to continue working in this connection so that the information is actually integrated automatically, and we can have better forecasts in a short term, so that, as many of you have mentioned, we can declare preventive contingencies and not a reactive situation. And now, on the other side, in terms of air, of course, we have so many challenges. Bogota just launched this agenda for air quality. We have a very rich, complex agenda for the following 10 years. This is a 10-year plan for air quality in this city with a number of projects. So our calling here has been to actually bring the environmental adherence plans so that every person and entity and company in the city have their own air quality agenda to see how are you going to contribute to the air quality of the city in the following 10 years. We have been calling on many people. I believe we have more than 1,500 people signing this air quality plan with individual institutional commitments to contribute to these improvements. But of course, we have some actions still pending. Today, our mayor launched the intermodal transportation plan for the next 30 years in Bogota. So there we see a little bit more of going beyond good ideas and good intentions, because there is a commitment to develop 2,500 intermodal routes and streets. So this represents many new ways to move. So in terms of mobility, I believe that we are doing very well. Now, even we have also partnered with the company that here in Colombia that creates fuel. And in this study, we have also noticed that the change of fuel in the main transportation system has been achieved in terms of reducing in 78% the particulate matter. So this agenda that we all know that has been operating for 10, 15 years in our cities is now demonstrating results that are impressive, even though it is not impacting the whole city in terms of air quality. It is actually impacting the main hubs and the main parts where this was a problem. So we need to implement agendas that are as effective as these ones, but they are now reaching a critical point. Now, in terms of diesel, we also have quite a complete agenda, and we are looking into moving from this public to private transportation for public transportation. And this is also a very important piece to improve air quality in the city. And we have noticed that there is also one component that is missing, which is transportation vehicles, cargo. I don't know if this is the case in Ecuador or Mexico. Many of these type of vehicles are not as regulated. In Colombia, we still have one man, one truck, and they don't have any kind of guarantee or any kind of making the corresponding technological transition that is required. We have one of the oldest fleets of transportation in Colombia, and that is a a very important agenda for us. Another agenda that we have here is the problem and the agenda around motorcycles. In this type of cities with the weather that we have, motorcycles are replacing vehicles in many, many ways. And unless we start making this industry of motorcycles green, we will have a problem in a few years. And there are also other climate justice issues that are big in our countries. These are problems that our industries will be pushing outside of the city without understanding that their emissions are going to reach the city or are going to affect other people in general. So these are some of the agendas that we are working on, and these are directly related to air quality, and we are very excited to continue working with these agencies together towards these challenges. Thank you very much for these comments, Carolina. And the list of challenges is big indeed, and only collaboratively we will be able to reach the outcomes that we want. Now, we have Teresa on behalf of Ms. Mejia. Yes, thank you so much. These comments were extremely interesting because the list of challenges that we also have is quite big as well. And as time goes on, we find more challenges. Now, let me talk about some of the challenges that we identify here in León. And I will go in order of relevance. So the first one is data quality. This was a very, very important point that I was discussing recently, because we use that data to design policies and to design communication. So it's very, very important to have good data quality. For example, in terms of the location of the stations, if we want to establish or to install more stations, we need to do this a little bit more orderly we want to have good data quality. So that is a very, very important priority for us. Now, another very, very important challenge is the use and maintenance of this program, of the forecasting plans, because we change government every 3 years, and now we will have a change of government in October. And this is a concern because it is possible for an administration to make progress in these plans, and then when we have a new administration, this could be impacted, or it could be canceled, or it could be demoted in terms of priority. So I believe that that is an important point as well. And of course, I also agree with many of the other challenges that you mentioned. But I will be remiss if I didn't say that communication is also a big challenge for us. Just as all the other colleagues have said, the technical agencies are not the only ones that should be involved in this. We need to talk and to work with the other agencies so that we can have a better communication to the public. And in this effort, we will have much better results. So these are my 3 main challenges, and this is a summary. Thank you so much, Teresa, for this. And this is, of course, the big challenge of every government, right? Continuity of actions. How the actions that have been taken in one administration can transcend, and also how can we maintain the same technical teams forward. Now, we are reaching the end of our session. Thank you so much, everyone, for devoting your time and energy to this event. And of course, thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you for your time and for all of the support that you have provided in this process. And now, perhaps Jessica or Christoph have a final comment to wrap up, perhaps some issues that you would like to address. We are just wrapping up now. So those questions that were not answered during the session, we will take note of them, and we will contact the speakers and bring back some answers to you all.
Sure. My only final remarks is actually to 3 things. One is to thank everybody for sharing their experiences. Second is to acknowledge the many ways the same question can be asked, and the need to really pay attention to the exact details of how that answer fits into decisions that are possible. I think all too often we look at sort of the production of science as being, we'll share this knowledge and then you figure out using your own ways of deciding, without recognizing that everybody has different powers. So I think as an agenda setter for at least our work at WRI, that's really important. And third is, I think, to be able to ask again and to involve all of you in the next round of City AQ and our broader efforts to bring more scientific work into a tool kind of useful format. We'd love to have your advice on the next few rounds as well. So solamente quiero decir muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, Jessica. Christoph, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. I definitely agree with what Jessica said in terms of like, we are really interested in the next step to incorporate more local information into our model so that we further improve the model, so that, because ultimately that's what we want to do. We want to have the best model everywhere. And so if in the next step we can sort of like have a bit more of a feedback loop, that will be really interesting. And it has come up a couple of times, things like when COVID is, then the emissions change and air pollution change, and how can we kind of like maybe together figure out how this can be quantified. We have done quite a bit of work in understanding the changes in air pollution because of the mobility restrictions that were related to COVID, and we have a number of information there also on our website. But I think that's a great example, and how by working together we can probably answer some of those questions really by combining the model and then some local information that we would love to incorporate in our model. So yes, if that's something for the next stage of CityAQ, I think that would be fantastic.
Thank you so much, Christoph. Now, with this, we wrap up our session for today. I'd love to ask all of the speakers to turn on your cameras so that we can take a group photo. Perhaps we can stop sharing the screen. We can see everyone with your cameras on. Thank you so much, everyone who have followed this hour and a half. Thank you so much to all of the teams from the participant cities that have worked in this process. There are so many ideas for the next step and next process, and we will have more comments and more feedback coming up. Thank you so much, and until next time.